He's ready.
Something's
Dan says he's ready. Hey, Brian.
He just gave me his time.
We're live.
Proposed parade.
Check 1, 2.
Yep.
Check.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. The budget workshop for the city of Panama City for July 22nd, 2025 is hereby called to order. We will begin with an opening prayer with City Attorney Nevin Zimmerman from First Presbyterian Church, and then I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Would you please stand?
Let's pray. Father, we're just so grateful for today as we come together and engage in business for our community. We're grateful for the leadership that we have, for the community that's interested, for the staff that works diligently to improve our quality of life. Thank you for this day in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
If you'll face the flag, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Branch,
Here.
Commissioner Street,
Here.
Commissioner Hughes, Commissioner Lucas,
Present.
Commissioner Granger.
Present.
Commissioner Hughes on his way? Do we know? Oh, okay, thank you.
All right, we're now on to audience participation. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Please approach the podium and state your name and address for the record in regards to any comments specifically regarding the city's budget workshop today. All right. Seeing no movement, the audience participation is hereby closed. All right, item number 5 is the budget presentation and discussion. So, awesome, thank you. All right, just for the benefit of everyone here today, the purpose of today's meeting is to review the proposed budget for fiscal year 2026 and to set the proposed millage rate, the ceiling for the city and the Downtown Improvement Board, and then to approve the date, time, and meetings in meeting place of the September City Commission meetings and the budget hearings.
In between.
All right, how do we got here? So from starting back at the beginning of this calendar year, in January, we had a series of budget trainings with the different departments. In March through May, the departments began to prepare their budget requests to submit to the city manager's office. During the months of May and June, the department budget reviews were held with the city manager's office. Also in June, we had a review of the financial and budget presentation at the city commission meeting. That was the June 10th meeting and the first commission meeting of this commission. In July, the city manager's office worked with departments to balance the budget without the use of reserves, as was directed by the commission. We set the proposed millage rate for the city and the Downtown Improvement Board. That is our task today. Recommendation is on September 9th at 5:01 p.m. to have the first public hearing and the adoption of the tentative millage and budget. September 23rd at 5:01 p.m. we'll have the second public hearing and adoption of the final millage rate and the budget. And then October 1 of this year, 2025, would be the beginning of fiscal year 2026. All right, our budget synopsis. So the all funds proposed budget is linking both all of the enterprise and special funds in with the general fund. Referring to the introduction section, page 5 of the proposed budget binder that each of you received, the proposed budget for all city funds totals $153,704,626 for fiscal year 2026. This is a decrease of 1.4% or $2.1 million over the adopted budget for fiscal year 2025. When looking at this chart, please note capital outlay is part of the total expense column. Capital outlay is operating capital such as equipment, vehicles, and building improvements. But we just wanted to kind of give a note as to how much the capital outlay was as part of the overall expenses. This includes contributions of $800,000 to reserves across all funds to begin to replenish the reserve fund. The total capital outlay of $10,100,000 includes operating capital and capital projects across all funds. A breakdown of the operating capital consists of $2.7 million in machinery and equipment, $900,000 in intangibles such as software, and then another $6.7 million in capital projects, $2.9 million for the CRA, $1.8 million for the infrastructure surtax projects, and then $660,000 in housing. Also $1.2 million in utilities, and $30,000 in the marinas. Associated service fees increases as approved by the City Commission in the 5-year rate studies for water and sewer rates, including the wholesale water increases from Bay County and environmental services, which was formerly called solid waste. This also includes $8.7 million in interest expense for the $150 million loan, which will be detailed on the next slide, allocated amongst several funds. The proposed budget does not include a cost of living adjustment for all employees. The CPI for May of this year was 2%. However, it does include a step adjustment for only those employees that are eligible. All right, referencing the $150 million loan interest expense. In the fall of 2023, the City Commission approved a $150 million loan to provide the city with the necessary cash flow to fund over $350 million in reimbursable infrastructure and recovery projects. This includes $87 million interest expense for the $150 million loan allocated amongst the following funds: General Fund at $3.1 million, Utilities at $5.1 million, the Marinas at $432,000, and then the Equipment Maintenance Fund at $73,000. The proposed budget includes using $1 million from current infrastructure surtax funds to a portion of the interest expense allocated to the utilities and marina funds for infrastructure projects. All right, the general fund proposed budget. The proposed budget for the general fund totals $67.6 million for fiscal year 2026. This is a decrease of 1.7% or $1.2 million from the adopted budget for fiscal year 2025. Some key points to note. This represents a contribution of $66,000 to reserves, and the proposed budget reflects personnel changes, adds, deletes, and reallocation of 7.29 positions from the fiscal year 2025 budget. This includes unfunding vacant positions in fire, police, purchasing, and the city manager's office, and adding 2 positions in the city manager's office specifically for the communications team. Not all state revenue projections are posted, but we're expected in between now and sometime in the month of August. The state of Florida half-cent sales tax is projected to decrease by approximately $245,000. Note this is not the infrastructure surtax funds or the merchant fee. The CRA administrative service charges were increased from $125,000 to $357,000, and this is based on 10% of CRA revenues, which is a best practice. These fees have not increased since 2015 when the admin service charges began. Other items to note included in the proposed budget is $3.1 million in debt service payment for the $150 million loan, $2.8 million in revenue from the sale of the nursing home property on Jinx Avenue in between 19th Street and 23rd Street, and $1.8 million in expense offset from better than expected actuarial experience in the fire department pension. All right, comparing fiscal year 25 to 26 funding levels by department. You'll see fire with a decrease, police with a slight increase. However, just will note there are other sources of revenue that are included inside the police department fund contributing to that. Public Works with a slight decrease. Parks and Rec with an increase. This is for a focus on additional maintenance as well as support of the MLK Rec Center. Logistics, a very nominal change. Development services saw a decrease, and then also housing and administration did. All right, general fund request versus funded. The general fund had requests totaling $20.1 million more than what we can fund at the proposed revenues as directed by the City Commission. This includes 21 personnel requests, $4.2 million in capital outlay request, and $11.4 million in capital project request. I will note that in your budget books that each of you have received, if you look at each of the funds, there is, as we briefed each one of you either on Friday or yesterday, the more specific breakdowns in there between the capital, between personnel, and between operating that was requested and ultimately not granted for the different departments is spelled out very specifically for those that wanted some additional detail. Of the 21 new personnel requests, the proposed budget funds 2 additional personnel specifically in the CMO's communications office, as directed by the commission or requested by the commission. Debt service not funded includes vehicles and equipment for police, fire, and also public works. All right, unmet needs by department. This graph depicts the unfunded requests by department in the general fund. The blue portion shows the amount proposed to be funded, and the yellow shows the amount not funded in the budget presented. This is detailed again in each cost center summary page inside of your budget books. A brief overview of the unmet needs. Fire department, $2.9 million in personnel, vehicles, equipment, and building improvements. Police department, $1.1 million in personnel, vehicles, and equipment. Public works, $3.4 million in vehicles and equipment. Parks and Rec, $1.6 million in operating funds and capital. Logistics, $894,000 in operating and capital. And then development services, $182,000 in operating. All right, there we go. All right, the commission action that is required today. The commission today is required to set the proposed millage rate for the city and the Downtown Improvement Board. This would be the maximum millage rate. Also set the proposed date, time, and place for the tentative budget hearing, the first public hearing, keeping in mind that the county's is September 3rd and the school board is July 31st, and according to state statute, we cannot conflict with the county and the school board, so we have to schedule around those. So our recommendation for the first tentative budget hearing would be Tuesday, September 9th at 5:01 p.m. All right, millage rate history. This was also something that was requested. Obviously, going all the way back to the 1900s. No, all the way back to 1990, all the way through this current or this most last fiscal year. So you can kind of see where it was coming into the new decade, all the way through Hurricane Michael and to where we are today. All right, the options before you today for the general fund millage options. The city's taxable values are up 7.81% or 285, I don't think that's 285 million. Oh, that's the overall value of the properties, correct. $285 million over last year. At our current millage rate of 4.7999, this value increase will bring an additional $1.3 million in ad valorem tax revenue compared to the previous year's revenue. The proposed budget is balanced as presented at the current millage rate of 4.7999 with no use of reserves. The truth in millage or trim is the legal process for establishing property tax rates in the state of Florida each year. The trim process defines the number of votes required for various millage options that the commission might consider. So again, the current millage rate for fiscal year 2025 is 4.7999. The rolled back rate would be the millage rate that would generate approximately the same amount of revenue as the prior year. The adjusted rolled back rate would be the millage rate that would have been levied if the maximum vote rate for 2024 had then been adopted. The majority rate is the maximum that can be levied with the majority vote of the governing body, which is 3 out of 5 affirmative votes. The 2/3 rate is the maximum that can be levied with a 2/3 vote of the governing body, which would be 4 out of 5 commissioners voting in the affirmative. Ad valorem taxes are budgeted at 95% of what we expect to generate in this draft budget. And all the CRA values are up except for the downtown CRA, with the most significant increase inside the Millville CRA, which is up 16.12% or $21 million over the last year. The CRA value changes are St. Andrews is up 6.7%, which is also about 6.7 million. Downtown, again, is down about 5%, which is 4.5 million. Downtown North is up 4.5%, which is about $3.5 million. And Millville, again, is up just over 16% to the tune of $21 million. This represents the city's CRA TIF revenue totaling $1.8 million, assuming that the millage rate stays the same for the city. Of the $17.9 million the city collects from ad valorem revenue, $1.8 million of that is expense to the CRA districts based on the tax increment financing amount. The DIB taxable values decreased by 6.1%, or about $5.3 million. The proposed budget approved by the Downtown Improvement Board is presented at the current millage rate of 3 mills. Questions and smiles. Alan, look at your screen. So that concludes our presentation. It is now time for discussion. Mayor, Commissioners, I just want to take a moment and express specific appreciation for Ms. Waldron, Mr. Jones, and Ms. Perman for all their hard work on this over the last many weeks, as well as all the department directors and their senior staff and the work for this. They have done just a Herculean effort here to get us where we are today, and we are available to answer any questions that you may have. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go for it. Who has a question?
Or defer to any of the commissioners.
Yeah, any questions? I mean, how deep of a conversation do you want to go in this meeting? We have like an hour and a half, so I guess pretty deep. So last night we had like a 3-hour discussion on budget, and we kind of ended with sort of concerns of the MLK Rec Center not having sufficient management capacity from our staff and enough in the budget as well. Do we want to go into that conversation since we sort of let off with it?
I mean, I think, excuse me, I think any question that kind of helps y'all get to where y'all need to be in order to set the maximum for the millage rate today is good. I think last night was a great intro conversation. You know, again, staff's available to answer questions. We've put forward, I think, the budget based on the feedback that we got from y'all back in June. Obviously, I think there are some different perspectives on the commission. So I think, you know, in addition to answering any questions y'all have, I think there does need to be some conversations amongst the elected officials.
I'd like to start off with that, and then even particularly piggyback on that with, we've been studying the amount of parks that we have and potentially putting those back in the tax roll. What are the consequences with Keith's budget, with pulling some of the parks off of his list of.
Yeah, great question. So I know that the staff had a preliminary meeting with the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee to kind of realign some of those parks. It's my understanding that in the very early part of August is when they're going to have kind of the formal kickoff meeting with the actual committee members themselves. I think the unknown in all that, Mr. Mayor, is we don't know if that process is going to take 6 months or a year. They do have up to a year based on the vote and authorization of this board. So there is a chance we could get through most of fiscal year 2026, certainly well over half of it, before we potentially bring the first park back or any kind of changes to that end. So I think it would probably be wise to that end to be conservative, knowing that, again, one of the feedback we got from the commissioners at the June 10th meeting was that an overall better job and more consistent job of maintenance in our parks is something that you guys want us to prioritize.
I think what you'll see is the hit to the or the gain in the maintenance, really, because I mean, with the exception of a couple of parks, there's not a whole lot of maintenance. So I think you're just going to see just more efficiency on the maintenance, which doesn't necessarily equate to dollars.
So, real quick, we got $2.8 million coming that we hadn't planned on, and we don't have a way that we're going to staff MLK. What if we took $1 million? Write that check, Josh, but what if we put $1 million
That's already in
there?
your budget right now.
Well, I mean, it's in the budget, but it's going to, we weren't planning on having it until this showed up.
No,
Now
it's
we
in
have a
your
way to do
budget plans.
but it's in the budget in a certain section. Can we change that? Take some of that money and put seed money over there?
This goes into the conversation I had last night. So your budget is, you've got two things that are mainly making up the gap in the budget.
Right.
One is 1.8 that's coming in from the fire pension is performing better than
Right.
what was anticipated. So there can be a one-time foregoing of basically putting into the fire pension of 1.8 million. And then you've got the 2.8 million in the property sale. That is what's going to get us to the budget we are today. So to move anything means you're changing another department's budget. That's the only way so that 2.8 is counted in the department's budget currently,
I thought the 2.8 was counted in debt service.
Counting the revenue.
which is part of our budget, yes.
Right.
Right. It's part of the overall budget because we have to pay towards the debt service. So in order to meet that $2.8 million is going into the budget to help offset that coming out of the funds.
So we're selling property for 2.8 million. Is that what we're talking
Correct.
about here? So that is coming in.
Above the appraised value, I'll add.
Way above, over $1 million above
So
the
that is
appraised
coming
value.
in. 2.8 million is coming in.
That never happens.
And I understood that it was being applied to our debt service wholly. How does that affect this
So
current
it-
budget for departments?
If we could pull up the debt service slide, I think that'll help bring clarity.
I do.
So debt service gets tagged to each user of that debt. So marina debt gets tagged to the marina fund, or at least it did up until this year when it can't sustain anymore.
Back.
I'm sorry.
Keep going.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay,
but Commissioner I'm sorry, go ahead.
good. No, you were.
So you'll see the 2.8 million from the sale of the property or sale of the fixed assets in the general fund revenue is 2.8 million. We are proposing to spend that one-time money on a one-time expense of going towards that interest expense of $3.1 million. But it is going in the general fund, and then the expense for the 3.1 will come out of the general fund. So I don't know if you're saying you wanted to see it directly applied to there?
So yes, that's where I was going. You and I had the conversation about using a one-time expense to cover a recurring. Because if we start the staff using that, we still have to find the money next year because we won't have that one-time expense. When Commissioner Hughes asked that same question here just now, I understood the answer to be that it was going to affect all of the budgets. And that's what wasn't clear to me how that would happen.
Technically, if you used 1 million of that 2.8 to help MLK and not use it towards the debt, then the debt would be $1 million short. We would have to come up with that. And the way to do that would be to pull from the other cost centers in the general fund.
How much does it cost us to hold that $1 million debt and not pay it now and keep it in the debt service?
That's default.
Oh, it's a defaulting? Oh, okay. We need to be able to fund MLK. How do we do that? That's what we solve for, and where does that
So-
come from? Well, we got two different ways of money there.
So that's why I was suggesting, and we do have SHIP funds, we have CBD, GD funds. There are other funding allocations that we could prioritize that come with certain restrictions that could qualify inside of using an MLK.
So in my research today on that point.
I'm sorry, can y'all all pull your mics closer? Some folks are having a hard time hearing, and also on streaming online. Thank you.
Perhaps I should use my
There we
broadcast
go.
voice.
Much better. Thank you, Commissioner. Excellent.
Well, teach.
So in my research today, LHAP funds and SHIP funds can only be used for housing. They can't be used for recreational. There are some CDBG funds that can be used. Do we have the latitude to do that? Is it already accounted for in this budget? Is there enough to move around?
Did you find the Department of Justice grants for youth activities?
Yeah, and I know Department of Justice has grants that we would have to go after to apply. I'm asking, do we already have in hand what Commissioner Street is suggesting?
So I've asked from Jared and Jonathan a report on what that is being programmed to today. And so that we could actually reallocate that based upon our current priorities. As I've been here, I can't remember ever going through and like really truly doing a deep dive into the LHAP or the CDBG funds to really allocate it towards commission-based priorities. It's been based upon the priorities that were set some years ago with a simplified update every 3 years, and it continues to kind of roll to that. It may have gone to things like sidewalks in LMI areas. It may have gone to ASAP programming. It may have gone to like those kind of things. But I think it's valid to reopen that and to base what we spend it on to priorities, even to the LHAP and the SHIP funds. That's why I brought that to attention, because it could be something to support MLK and 15th redevelopment, because there is housing that's going there. And so I'm really just saying that, hey, we need to align with the priorities that were being set. And anything that we add at this point is going to take, we have to open up something. So we can open up the CBDG fund, we can look there, we can open up departments, we can open up, but we've got to, like, we just can't not pay the debt service, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So as I mentioned last night, there's in this budget, the assistant position in parks that was not ever filled. But there's no other new staff. The intent is to transition existing staff. And existing staff have existing duties. And so my concern is the programming of that facility. We've got a shiny new $20 million facility that needs to be programmed with the needs of the primary community it serves as a priority. And we knew this day was coming, that we have to be ready to get in the building. So that we made it a priority. We said, what are our top 5 priorities? MLK Center, Martin Luther King Center, Martin Theater. And that's how we prioritized our work.
So let me ask the question this way, because this is how I attack, and how I attack with any priority that we've had, because everything comes from something. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. So who on this board is passionate about sunset yoga? I'm just using that as an example.
About what?
Sunset yoga.
Sunset, what, sir? I'm sorry.
Yoga.
Oh,
I'm pretty
sunset
sure the
yoga.
mayor is.
I'm pretty sure the mayor is, very much so.
See, what I'm saying is, yes, there are positions that are aligned for certain duties, but those positions that are staffed inside of City Hall should reflect the priorities and objectives of the commission. So in reprioritizing staff or objectives or even departmental budgets, they should be reflective of what the commission is communicating as the primary priority. I agree with you on the aspect of MLK is a top priority. The question is, what are lower priorities that no one on this board truly cares about and would be fine saying, hey, we don't need to do that anymore? Does that make sense what I'm saying, I guess, Janice?
Well, what makes sense is that we're now having to have this discussion when it should have already been incorporated, I think, in the planning prior to this point.
That's a fair
what
point.
makes sense.
Yeah, that is a fair point. And so that leads me knowing, because we can't have conversations like this, that perhaps there's someone on the board that's passionate about those things that now we need to work through a negotiation on how do we do this. So does that make sense what I'm trying to say? Like, because that means that there's been some type of, there's been some type of like, hey, we don't want to get rid of those things. There's a reason why we don't want to get rid of those things. Like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, I guess, Janice. Am I personally open to like having more staffing in MLK? 100%. Do I think we can just raise taxes to do that? No, I don't think that's the right decision to do. So the question is, how do we realign objectives around that?
Well, I can tell you.
So, Jan, if we didn't have this money, how would we pay our debt service on the $3.1 million?
Then 2.8 million more would have to come out of the general fund budget from all the departments.
The difference, Robbie, this year versus last year is last year it was reserves that were used.
Yeah.
That does not exist anymore. So you've got this much to work with. You either got to raise the millage or you got to cut your spending to change your priorities.
Okay, so CRA, you can't pay salaries with it, but you can maybe use it over there.
They could pay for programming.
They can pay for programming, they pay for some of it, right?
Well, like if we had an MOU with PCR or Parks and Culture and Rec, and the CRA could pay for that, and we could structure like a 1 to 5 year agreement, and the CRA could pay for the initial programming expenses. They are paying for.
How much are we talking?
So they're currently paying for supplies right now. So everything in the building, if you turn that building upside down and shook it, everything that would fall out, the CRA is currently paying for it. Yeah, $325,000. And the downtown north CRA could potentially pay to operate the facility initially.
Okay, initially, and that still doesn't fix our problem later.
So it gets us clear the long-term, or I'm sorry, the $150 million loan interest payment. And so when that closes out, it could open up some breathing room. It buys us time.
All right, so almost $2 million slash from what he asked for, what's proposed. I've got to assume that's in salaries and people, right?
Could you restate that question?
The requested and what's proposed on Parks and Rec, almost $2 million.
That's
Difference.
inclusive of like,
Is that salaries mostly?
that's salaries, vehicle, operating supplies, equipment. Some of those things we found that we're already covering in the CRA grant, the CRA MOU for supplies for MLK Rec Center. So I mean, there was some duplication there, but that's, you know, some of those request items are wish list items and some of those are actual needs. So we align that in the budget review process.
All right, and how many people is it going to take to run that
It
place?
included 12 new positions for the MLK Rec Center.
Okay.
So that's what you see, the requested personnel was 53. So it included additional personnel as well as additional cost for programming dollars and, you know, just the cost of having the new building, the insurance, the security, the janitorial. And like we said, CRA is funding $325,000 this year for supplies to get it started. And we could do something like that again for 2026. Next week, we'll do a presentation of the CRA's work plan that's being proposed for 2026. The MLK Rec Center is not currently in the Downtown North CRA work plan, but I mean, that's y'all's prerogative. If you want to change the work plan that we have come up with based on the socials that we did for the CRA.
So if I'm understanding, the amount requested, 53 funded employees, but the proposed budget is 42. And when I see the delineation of those 42 on page 45, there's one funded position for the MLK Center.
That is
So I understand that correctly?
So
That's total in the
My-
whole department, but if they're not.
So my
breaking that
question
down.
is,
So this is a really good exercise on when we make votes, why we do, how we're going to fund it on the other side. Because
yeah, these are legacy costs.
I know, and they're going to come over and over again.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
So in my conversation, at least my budget said that there are personnel that are here that their position titles should have changed to match with MLK. That is what I've communicated, at least. You know, but
So are you deriving the budget?
no, I'm just saying we all give feedback from
Yeah.
the standpoint of like, hey, like this is what I
Yeah.
think, and
If I can jump in, so obviously, you know, we meet with each of y'all every week, okay? One-on-one, at least myself or one of the city managers. And so we've had these conversations, you know, over the last few months. And, you know, we get a lot of feedback from the elected officials, we get it from the community, we get it from the directors. And so, you know, obviously there was, you know, a recognition that, you know, that we are going to support this facility. And so the operating expenses are in there, but then you get to staff. And, you know, I think it was the clerk that said one time, I mean, the biggest expenses inside of the general fund are staff, it's the employees. And so, you know, yes, we have prioritized and we have on the street now the position for the manager of the center to kind of help us get ready to open up and also work with the city manager's office and the director of PCR to look at all of the employees to determine which ones would be best served to help operate initially, as we've said, and I feel like we said this for about a year, that we're going to crawl, walk, run as we stand up the MLK Rec Center. So we keep in mind, we have PCR employees at Elm, at Glenwood, at City Hall, as well as Oakland Terrace. And so, you know, so I think that, you know, we are absolutely committed to operating this. But, you know, and I know that there are definitely some across all of the stakeholders in this that would love to see it fully staffed and operating, you know, to the maximum number of hours right out of the gate. But I go back and I know that, you know, we've kind of talked about some preliminary hours with the director of PCR, Mr. Mefford, and he's visited other rec centers kind of around the state. I think he's predominantly stayed in Florida, correct, Keith? Yep, to kind of get some best practices on this. And so, you know, we are committed to this facility, but again, the feedback that we've gotten on the staffing and all that, I think, you know, I've said this, I would rather sit across the table and tell an employee, hey, I'm sorry, you're going to have to work 10 hours of overtime the next 3 months, than tell that employee, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to let you go because of budget constraints. So that is my general approach. I've always felt in all of my executive management positions, it's better to be a little too understaffed than a little too overstaffed, especially with the budget constraints that we're facing and the limited resources that we have.
What, define crawl, walk, run for me,
Because
please.
we've been crawling a year.
Yeah,
Well, I don't think we've even started to crawl yet. I would say respectfully, I don't think the MLK Rec Center has been born yet. I think it's still being built. It's still,
I think what we're asking for here, Jonathan, is what does the idea look like of the maximum amount of people that are going to be staffed there? Like what number does that land at? And then how
do we
long
get there?
is it going to take us to get to that point?
So I
the
want to.
public's not gonna walk.
I think what you're hearing is we want a further sharpening of the pencil.
Yeah.
And here's how, and so I think it's, and Josh kind of touched on, I think it's easy for us because I don't know anything about fire departments and PCR. I've never run any of these departments. We up here, we will pick on the most visible things, sunset yoga. Right, and that's not really fair. And I think one of the interesting things would be, and I'm picking on street sweeping, and I don't know anything about street sweeping, but I know that's a problematic sweeper. And multiple times I've said, why didn't we sweep after the Christmas parade? Trash is everywhere. And well, it's breaks all the time. And I see it's been reduced, but I would say come back to us with multiple choice. And so Josh kind of touched on the idea that maybe we don't, and I'm just picking on programming at the park, but we want multiple choice of, all right, do you want your roads swept once a month? Once a quarter, every week, here's good, better, best, and here's what it costs in the department. We're kind of hinting at it here, but there's no qualifying quantity of street sweeping requested $700,000, almost $800,000, but the proposed budget's 200. What does that actually mean to us when a citizen says, why are the roads not being swept? So
you're asking them to come up with good, better, and best for each one of these?
just things that they think they're interested in exploring. Maybe street sweeping should be privatized. I don't know. I can go through that exercise myself and come shove it down your throat. Or the department heads can say, okay, here are things we could do, further cuts, but here's the repercussions. So when we say yes or no, we can explain it to the public on why we did it.
Well, I think that staff has already said we can fund these extra positions out of the CRA. So I think, and they've also said that they're looking to move some folks away from their current positions into these positions that are going to service the Vales Rec Center. So I think what we're hearing is that there's not going to be just one position, but that's just the one that's just been identified as a new position. I agree. To your point, there probably should have been some more identification. Hey, this one.
Yes, I mean, I think what you're proposing sounds great.
But what I'm looking at is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like we are saying we just want to see a plan, right?
Exactly, and that's not new. We've talked about what we need to see in terms of going forth. Last fall, we were talking about hiring in the first quarter of this year, the director. And it seems I'm the only one that remembers that conversation. But it was said that we were going to put it out the first quarter of this calendar year, 2025. We're now here late summer, midsummer, it gets out, but that person hasn't had the opportunity to do the kinds of things that we recognize need to be done, as you said last night, Mr. Hayes, in our workshop for the Martin Theater. You're going to hire early so that that person can begin to get ahead of the opening season. So we're not opening the Martin and then saying, but we won't have a season this year because our staff just got hired. And that's essentially the position that the MLK Rec Center is in now.
Adding, I'm not a fan of taking money out of the CRA to the MLK Rec Center, because if we're trying to get something to happen on MLK, we're going to take all the money and say, we don't have any grants to get anything going.
Then what are you not going to do in the general fund?
Yeah.
I'm saying, I'm asking for more cuts here, reductions in spending here, so that we have more money to fund MLK and not pull from the CRA.
Could I ask a clarifying question? So for what I'm hearing is for MLK Rec Center, you want options and then an associated cut across the other departments to fund those other options. And whether it's fully staffing the MLK Rec Center with the requested 12 total positions, which would be 11 more than what we're at today, or whether it's moving existing parks and culture and recreation workers from one location to another to do that recreation work they're already doing just at this center and basing out of there and programming it. So I think we can come up with those options and then associated costs and then those associated reductions and let you know where any kind of pinch points would be for departments.
And I think it's imperative that when we start talking about moving employees around, we're not just wanting warm bodies. We want folk who understand how to operate programs that will be geared for the specific audiences that they'll be there. So we don't just take, this used to happen, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but this used to happen when I worked in the school district. John, you've been in trouble, so we're going to move you over here to the troubled school. I don't want to see that happening
So I would
in the city.
support that, ma'am, because I think we don't want to set any of our employees up for failure. And so when they take, if somebody were to move from one spot to another as a rec worker or another worker, like I've got a maintenance crew. I'm not expecting somebody that does, landscaping maintenance to step in and be a recreation worker. I think that would be entirely unfair to their skill set unless they have that skill set in their background. But I think we owe it to all of our employees to train them up for success and set those new expectations and hold them accountable. But to just move somebody around to a premier facility that's a non-performer would be detrimental to everything we're trying to accomplish.
Follow me on this one. I'm gonna step out a little bit. Both marinas. We got in here to fund St. Andrews for 6 months. What if we didn't fund it past December? The contract says they take over management at St. Andrews after 50. Okay?
Correct.
So right now, this year, they'll make about 150,000 on the slips, 27, they'll make they'll make 400,000 on gas. They're selling about 1.9, the cost is 1.5. And the ship store, I don't know, makes 100 grand, I don't know. Making about $285,000 after all debt service is done. But if we put 78 slips together and did the profit, it's 354. So we can save $285,000 and put it over there to MLK. So we already are spending.
We did this exercise 2 days ago, I think it
Okay.
was. And what we found is you have a debt service payment that you're making out of that marina fund. So if you take away the revenue, you take away your ability to pay that debt service payment. Now,
We're also funding
what revenue
staff
you taking away?
operations.
They're getting the slip rental.
yeah, and we still have to pay the debt,
Okay, what's the debt service?
$500,000.
The portion of the marina fund for the $150 million loan is that 431, the orange. Which we're proposing to use 400,000 of infrastructure surtax dollars to help offset that cost for the marinas fund. But they also have another loan where they're repaying the general
The downtown
fund back from the Panama City Marina bulkhead debt from 2013 of $275,000, which we're pausing in next year's budget because the marina fund doesn't have the funds to pay it. But
I got an idea for that too.
you're mentioning the revenue that they're bringing in with the slips that they have now, but currently that barely covers their operations right now.
Okay.
I mean, there's still this in the whole $18,000 actually.
Okay, what about the 400,000 that we have for the design with St. Joe? We still have that, right?
That's in the marina loan funds from 2013.
Right? What if we said, we'll take that, and whoever's gonna do the marina, they pay for all the design? Now we've got 400 grand, there's about $700,000 that I found just by taking the marinas and taking part of that out and transferring it over there. Because somebody's gonna be paying for some stuff, and it's not gonna be the city. We're getting the money back on St. Andrews, no matter what. We're getting money back.
No,
Well, the city's gonna stop paying for stuff because they're gonna pay for everything.
Except for the debt.
Except for the debt
but
service.
we're also going to stop collecting the revenue. So when we stop paying for expenses, then we're gonna stop paying
Well, we're
for,
gonna get sales tax of 1% down on the slips, aren't we?
Yes.
At a point, but it won't happen the first year. I
Right.
mean, we get 1%, I guess is what we get.
We get the 1%, right?
The challenge is, and this is why it's, it's a fluid conversation, is we've been waiting on MEP to be finished on the marina to finish the 50 slips for now. It was supposed to be done in June. Well, we don't even have decking down now. So contractually, there is no timeline per assumption. It's only when they're complete.
But what I'm saying is, no matter whether they're complete or not.
Well, then we would be in breach of-
And they take over, but the debt service is the issue there.
Well, then we'd be in breach of contract. Because
Well, we would make that, we would all say yes to that. We're not going to just do it and say, y'all got to accept it. They would have to accept that. And we wouldn't be in breach of contract if both parties said, by December, we're going to take over, rather than even if 50 slips aren't done. Because that's the contract, is 50 slips.
You're proposing this to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to find the money, and we're getting money back on that. But the 400 on downtown, that's already budgeted somewhere. And whoever wins downtown,
So that money is coming from a debt service that can only be used on the PC Marina. You can't move it anywhere else.
These are enterprise funds.
can I find a yes anyway? This
I mean,
summer.
I think it's very creative the way that you're thinking through it. I think that
Isn't it fun?
governmental funding is very different than private funding. We end up being restricted. And that's why, when I go and talk about CBDG or we talk about CRA, like those are things that can only be spent there. We have these other things that can be spent anywhere, but they're very few and far between that don't come with restrictions. And so,
And that's why whenever you guys want to get a new revenue source, say for parking, I would prefer it be not restricted.
Yeah, we'll text
Did
that.
we instruct our grant writers to look for grant funds to open the MLK Rec Center?
that's a great question. I don't know.
We have Burke Blue working on the new market tax credit to cover, I think it's roughly 20%, $4 million of the construction cost, which we can do that up to 3 years after the construction's complete. So we do have that going, and I believe I'll let Brandon speak to the grant writers.
No, I think that they have explored options, like we did explore the Best Buy grant, I know for that facility. We didn't end up applying for it because they needed the facility to be open. And I mean, our grant writers there just isn't a whole lot there for programming. We could apply for certain equipment, like the replacement computers for the computer lab and things like that. That's what we were looking at with the Best Buy grant. We could do that in the future to help us.
So like the computers and the lab at the MLK, is that included in the 20 million for the STEM?
No,
Okay.
that's part of the $325,000 that the Downtown North CRA, the supplies that the CRA is purchasing for the facility,
Right.
that's part of that.
Okay. How, do we make the debt service payment monthly, quarterly, or annually? Down at the Marina, St. Andrews. Is that a monthly payment?
How's that one structured?
It's
Which I have a copy of all these.
Principal is once a year and
debt
interest is
statements
twice a
that you
year.
guys want to see.
Okay. Do we know what that interest payment is?
It's for the St. Andrews Marina.
Right.
It's right here, that 400.
No, what's the interest payment? I'm just trying to figure out, can we steal some of that? Does all of that have to go towards that? There's money there that we're not going to have to spend.
At the St. Andrews Marina? What money are we not spending?
Yeah, I think you're.
Well, then we're going to, in revenue that we would get, we can take that and transfer it. Okay, they're going to spend the money to do the rest of, well, let me back up. Right now, they're making about $285,000.
But they're spending more than that.
Exactly. Well, they're minus 285. They're spending 2.4 and they're making 2.1.
Okay, this is a great example. So the debt service payment just on the Marina note is $400 and something thousand.
Right.
So take away all the revenue, you're not losing 200,000, how much are you losing?
Well, what's the other payment? Right.
400 something thousand, so you doubled
That's
how
the
much you're
balance.
losing.
What's the payment, though, is what I'm trying to figure out. What do we have to service that debt?
That's it,
Jan?
431,000.
No. Interest payments twice and service and.
Principal, there's no principal payment on this until the loan closes.
Okay,
This is all interest.
okay.
Can you go through Truist Bank's potential refi, the term sheet of what the savings would be for that?
Sure, we're looking at around 2.2 million in savings.
So
Once we
just as a
refinance that.
background, we borrowed 150 million and we basically get a lower interest rate if we refinance is what.
Correct.
And we would save 2.8?
2.2.
2.2. And so if that's on 150 million, what I've been told, we have $90 million kind of set aside because there's no line of credit for governments. I learned something every day.
That's the principal of that loan that's left.
And correct me, so governments can't have a line of credit like I would have or you would have where you just kind of draw it down. They basically give you the money and
We
you just sit on
did,
it.
we did have a line of credit prior to this $150 million.
And so there's sort of, explain the sort of how we invest it. We pay interest, but we also reinvest it. Can you explain that sort of? the
Sure.
buckets?
The loan is $150 million for a term of 3 years at 5.82% fixed interest. I drew the 24.5 million was used to pay down a previous debt. So the other 125.5 I drew and invested. And it's earning roughly 5.15. But again, it's not the entire 150
Yeah, it's
million,
close. It's
right?
better than nothing.
Right,
So is there any conversation to be had about if we have 90 million sitting around and we don't want to ruin cash flow as projects come in, but not drawing such a large line and potentially we save, I mean, it's it's 3/4 of a percentage, but if we only borrowed 90 million or 100 million, how much would we actually save if we didn't borrow so much?
it's a little bit too premature in the process for me to think about paying down any of the loan right now. I'm only about 25% through the capital projects that the loan is going to fund. So that, I wouldn't recommend doing anything with that right now. I will refinance it at a lower interest rate. It'll be 0.79 of SOFR plus 0.97, I think. The total savings is roughly 2.2, but it's at a variable rate, so it'll move up and down with the market rate.
So I've been very aggressive on wanting to pay off the loan. So
Backwards,
now,
we're gonna spend 228 on salaries down there at St. Andrews. That's the money we won't have to spend. If we made them,
but you won't get the income.
they won't be there. Right, well, that money is budgeted somewhere. Where's that money coming from?
It's budgeted, but if we do not receive it, then we don't actually realize it. We couldn't use it to spend on anything else.
Those employees are making revenue.
That funding that messes me up.
So to Jan and Alan's conversation about debt, so what changed in the last 60 days? I guess it's 60, 70 days where we've gotten kind of some new information from FEMA. One is our roads project that's going to be another $15 million worth of a project. That's the estimate. We also got further money. I believe there was a recost of insurance and some things like that on Martin Theater. So there was some money that was brought to the table on that, as well as slip money as well, that they upped the cost of that. So what now is it's created a surplus of grant funding that exceeds our original projected grants before. It's a good problem to have, but it also means that you're having to carry the cost longer. And so grant money does come with some costs. It's not 100% free because you have to be able to at least do the turn between your use and your expense of it. So.
Right,
Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, but I think
Okay.
what you were getting to with FEMA was that their reimbursement process may be taking a little bit longer now.
Oh, 100%.
Than it was previously.
Yeah,
I think
well,
the frustrating part is there's all these, we've just realized 2.8, 1 point this, we got like 5 or 6 coming in that we weren't expecting. And we got one problem to solve and we can't do it out
You
of all
can't
those.
solve
We
it.
can't find that money out of all those.
No.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Hey, welcome.
That's because it's, that's because the budget's always been, but the budget's always been deficit funded before, and there's no more deficit to fund
Yeah, so
the gaps.
let's go back to the 5-year projection or the 6-year projection to really show kind of how we got to this point. I think it was in you guys' slide that was before, and this goes all the way back to Hurricane Michael. If you look at revenues compared to expenses, following Hurricane Michael, the city has been operating in a deficit until 2025, when we made the decision to make changes, PMO, things like that, to create this balance and not this unfunded process. But we did it through utilizing some remaining reserves we have. So now in 2026, there are no reserves. We cannot operate at a deficit. So that means you have to make changes to programming, to staffing, to capital improvements, which is essentially all being handled by grants. It's not even in this budget. And so you're at a point where you can't pull any more levers. You've got to make a choice. You either, if you're going to keep taxes at the same, that means you have to realign your priorities in your budget.
Where can that money go? All those unknowns that are coming in.
So one, the 1.8 million, that is a savings from better experience on the actuary basis for the firefighter pension, has to be used
Makes
to
sense.
offset the expense. So it becomes a credit, it's an offset to the general fund of $1.8 million. So it frees up money. That money, in addition to the sale of the nursing home property on Jinx, is going to cover down the line of credit and budgetary shortfalls. So it's filling an existing gap. So I think because we've presented a balanced budget, it's now where you're going to get the money from. So the exercise that's the exercise we've been going through.
Okay, so the pain is, it's going to the reserve.
No, it's.
I mean, to the debt service.
$66,000 in this entire budget is going to
Okay,
reserve.
but
From the general
we-
fund.
If we didn't have those two, we were going to have to bring it from the debt, from the general fund, right?
I'm sorry, say again.
If we didn't have those two incomes, we wouldn't have to get the 3.2 from the general
We would
fund,
either have to cut deeper or raise revenue.
okay?
So, because it's, again, when we presented the balanced budget, we've been instructed like hard pass on funding a dime out of reserve. So that's what staff's done. Now, I will tell you, and I want Jan to validate this, but I did some back of the napkin math with how she's currently allocated the debt service for the $150 million loan, and using the new debt service payment when she refinances, and that's roughly 6.5 million. Is that correct, ma'am?
Yes, that's correct.
So if I allocated that new payment in the same proportion she allocated the payment as scheduled for fiscal year '26, it would save the general fund roughly just under $800,000. So that would be a net benefit to the general fund. It could be used for potential funding of MLK Rec Center, or it could be used as additional contributions to reserves.
However, but this is important to note.
Right.
Can we take 1.8 from the fire pension next year to offset the pension payment?
No, you cannot.
Are we contractually obligated to have to do that?
I believe so, yes, sir.
The other side of it, do we have 2.8 million of property sales outlined to close in the next budget year?
Not right now.
So this is why I bring the attention to.
I would say very likely, I mean, not guaranteed, not as cleared out, but yes, no, I could name probably 5 properties right now that I would love to sell and plan to do so in the next year, not parts.
We'll eventually run out of
No, I
properties.
agree with that.
My angst is if we didn't have any of these positive
You got-
monies,
you-
we still have to make the debt service and we have to fill MLK.
So
Those two things have to happen.
exactly right. So when we look at next year's debt service payment, if Jan's successful in refinancing the loan, that's 2.3 million from the general fund. Lord willing, we get through these projects and Jan's comfortable either paying off that loan in its entirety. That's why we've withheld insurance proceeds to continue to backstop the debt that's not reimbursable. And then, so when Jan closes all that out and she goes, I just performed this century's greatest magic trick, we don't have a dime that we owe. And then that frees up 2.3 million in the general fund that following
To go
year.
do other priorities.
But that's a lot of
similar to
ifs
what you're talking
and hopes and dreams, so.
Did we, speaking of property sales, did we sell the other property to recoup for the parking lot? We spent the money for,
I think we've recouped pretty much the sale, I think we recouped the purchase, but we have not gotten the money to be able to
Yeah,
build it.
we-
So we haven't constructed.
We sold the cell tower lot, and then we're under contract on one of the 3 lots at 13th and Beck / 13th and Chestnut. And then we're working on the contract for the other 2 lots at 13th and Beck,
How much
13th
you
and
making off of
Chestnut.
those?
Almost $1 million between all 3. It might be $900K, but that's going towards the grant that's kind of already been
Make the
committed to
grant
for
match to
parking.
build the
Yeah.
parking.
That's
So if
what,
you
that's
don't-
what was
If you don't use
approved.
the money, you lose the grant.
All right, is it fair to ask, I mean, there's millions of dollars we've just talked about that is positive. Is it fair to ask that we can find $1 million in some of this or no? Or in that money or through the budget? And I'm using $1 million because I think there's with 12 and you've got budgeted what? I don't have my glasses on. Well, how many for MLK? I only see one.
So
Is it 12?
that's why we didn't, that's what we were saying a moment
Yeah.
ago. There's no plan. We could do this and we could do that.
How much should 12 equal? Keith, do you know?
What's the question?
How much did 12 employees equal? Because here, I'm seeing,
I think it was near,
okay,
and that's including the existing assistant director that so it's just under that.
More like a little over $1 million.
With the benefits.
$1 million.
Just for
a year.
salaries? $1 million just for salaries, not for,
I mean, we're paying 55.
Oh,
Benefits would be included in that, so.
I'm sorry, I meant personnel.
I mean,
Yeah.
is that a fair question to ask? And again, new, don't know.
So-
$1 million more of reoccurring expenses is what you're asking, Robbie.
And well,
Yeah.
So.
we're going to shut down year 2.
So they need to find $5.6 million worth of cuts is what you're saying. Or potentially, if we can refinance, it'll be a little less than that, maybe $3 million worth of cuts.
You know, we've arrived at an unfortunate point of pitting, and you keep coming
Yeah.
back to that. It's
Yeah.
either this or that. We're pitting the departments against each other, and then the MLK Center becomes the culprit. That is an unfair position
I agree with
to
you.
be in.
And that's why I'm saying we need
And
to
as the key
communicate
budget
priorities.
Advisor for the city. I mean, your thinking and your logic is all in this. And so this is where we are, Commissioner Street.
That's why I go to looking at CBDG, allocating more funding there. I look at reprioritizing. I don't know, if somebody's got a better suggestion, I like,
What does CBG fund?
Community Development Block Grant is a federal program that sends community development dollars into communities. We currently are using CDBG, and some of that can be, and some of that is funding our own ASAP program here. So those monies are already allocated. You know, it seems like it's very narrow. You can choose from CRA Downtown North, you can choose from CDBG, which primarily is in the low to moderate income neighborhoods, but the MLK Rec Center is going to serve the city, not just a community. That's a primary market. But, you know, it's a shining example for all of us in the city.
And to further illuminate on that, CDBG allocation for 2026 is $360,009. 20% of that is allowable for admin at $72,000, and these are percentages of that total allocation. 15% of it's for public service, which is currently going to ASAP at $54,000, and those are maximum allowable percentages. And the rest we currently have designated for public facilities or infrastructure. And when I say public facilities or infrastructure, part of HUD's restrictions on that is that it can't be a current project. It has to be new and can't even be designed yet, so.
In low to moderate,
$72,000.
low to moderate income,
Is that we have to hire
the
somebody?
LMI areas.
Yeah, it has to be in LMI areas, so.
So the administrative cost is 72,000. We already have somebody that does that, right? So
That's a salary offset for that department.
And Commissioner Hughes, I appreciate your looking at where we can do this and how we can do this, because we do have potential opportunities. So
There's a lot of money out there.
Yeah.
There are allowable
It
uses.
ends up with a bunch
Yeah.
of restrictions.
So one thing I will just add is, and I did this last year as well, and more so this year with a new commission coming in, I issued a hiring freeze back in April or May as we kind of really ramped up this budget process. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe any department or division was not impacted by that. So, had we had any staff, at the MLK Rec Center during this, I can't say, that they might not have had one or two staffers potentially impacted if this had been up and running 2 years ago. And so, each position we kind of looked at, and we kind of had a conversation with, with HR and with the director and the city manager's office to kind of discuss through that. But again, the bulk of our funding in the general fund, or the expense of the general fund is staff. At the end of the day, I'm happy to take the direction from this commission on prioritizing. I understand, with different departments and everything. I know, when I interviewed for this position, I talked about getting back to the basics, knowing that we were going to have a pretty tight few years in front of us. So. I don't believe it's my intention or the assistant city managers or Mr. Mefford to operate the MLK Rec Center in a way that is dishonoring to the community. But we do have some financial limitations that every single department and every single division is facing across the entire city.
The hiring freeze saved $1 million in employee pay. $1 million just keeps showing up under all funds. Under proposed for a year, last year was adopted at 56, this year proposed 55.
So
We need $1 million.
can you
Yeah, I don't.
tell us what page you're on, sir?
Under all funds on introduction on page 5.
I think what you're hearing is there needs to be some work. I'm going to iterate that again. And it's not, I can come through and say, what about this? What about this? What about CNG plants? What about, and that's not really fair.
No, it isn't.
It's not. And so, the departments need to go back and sharpen the pencil and come back to us with the options and repercussions so we can explain to the public.
Okay, I guess what I'm trying to say is based on multiple conversations from what I sense from the majority of this commission, I believe that's what we did. But if you're wanting me to then go back and sharpen more, I'd like to get a consensus. Where are there particular departments or divisions so that we're not in the same place in a month? And like, Jonathan, why did you recommend reducing more maintenance from Parks and Rec? Or why did you pull off utilities when people are finally telling us, we love how fast you guys are responding to utility leaks now? And to that end, because I don't want to be in that position again in a month. So willing to make those cuts, but at the end of the day, we all have to own those together. And so I'd like to know where y'all want to see this is what I was trying to get. This is what I really wanted back in the early part of the year, when we ended up doing an open house instead. And it's what I was trying to get at back in June, knowing that we were going to have to potentially take some deeper cuts. So if there's a consensus to find $800,000 to $1 million for the MLK Rec Center and open right out of the gate, at 65 miles an hour, we will absolutely do that. But I mean, I don't want to be back in
I get it with a phasing where we
Yeah.
are now.
Okay.
But I don't want this to become the precedent. And so the whole year, we never get past this point. So if this is the process, and it is where we are now, say, this is what we can do, this is how we can start, we'll roll out. You've done it for marinas, you've done it for other areas. This is what I've asked you for months now. Just, we're working on it. And now when I see the work, the MLK Center is not here.
Sounds like we need a presentation or at least a plan on how we roll it out next few weeks. Is that possible?
And I would focus specifically on the MLK Rec Center. Don't think that I'm picking on people. I think what Jonathan just asked is exactly what I just gave him. He asked, what are you willing for us to go back and to talk about? And I just listed off probably $1 million worth of funding stuff that could be. But that doesn't mean that's where it has to come from. I'm just saying he asked the question, I answered. And so there may be other things that like, hey, maybe we don't need to do this. Maybe we don't need to do that.
I think it's your job as the city manager, the assistant city manager, to look at their departments and look against other cities and see where they think that they're overspending. Unless you want us to all start going into departments and looking at other cities and coming back to you with homework and pushing and I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's our job. I think that's your job, is come back and say, here's what I see among cities. Here's the cities I've called and how they save money, and suggest those to your departments, because those are your departments, not ours. They don't report to us.
No, they don't. But again, at the end of the day, this board is going to have to sign off on this. And I'm trying to tell you, I have conversations with each of y'all, and I can bring those back. I can recommend it. And we're going to have today it's the MLK Rec Center. It could be Parks and Rec maintenance. It could be police. It can be fire. It can be street sweeping. It can be something else. So, I hear you. I'm just.
I mean, do you want me to run
But we can avoid
I can run a
this.
pro
When the
forma
vote
on
happens.
privatizing garbage for you, but that's your job. Your job is to look at those departments and say, maybe we should privatize this service. Maybe we shouldn't. That's not my job. It's your job to come back and give us that information.
But these votes, we wouldn't be here if these votes were made with, we have to fund it from the beginning. We're going to spend 20 million, and while it's being built, we're going to go ahead and budget for it. We would not be in this position. Mine on Beach Drive, the only way I'm going to do it is if we can fund taking care of it, maintaining it. We can't vote like this and then say, oh, we got to find the money somewhere. We have to do that up front. And that's why we are where we are. Okay, so there's money all over the place.
And
that should be fine.
Yeah, and Josh has identified that next year, there's going to have to be either taxes go up or reduction of spending, 4.6 million.
Yes.
So this is just the start of a structural change in these departments that needs to happen, and conversations that need to happen. I mean, and we can pick on departments if you want to in the dais. That's not fair, right? And so we've identified next year's going to be even tighter. And so how do we get there? And that might be borrowing a little bit less money, not putting us in jeopardy, but that's for your job to figure out.
Understood.
And let me just say to city staff, all departments, I appreciate you, all of you, and I try to show you that. I've done ride-alongs, I've visited, and so I'm not saying that I think any department is less than any other department. And I hope you understand the frustration that I'm in, sitting here at this point, after having the construction started, and now we're nearly ready to open the MLK Rec Center. I don't have to recount for you what this means, not just from a historical standpoint, but from a very real standpoint now. We have young men and women, boys and girls who are in our streets, who are getting in trouble because they don't have a place to go. And when we open this center, we need to open it with a solid plan and commitment to the city that we are going to have programming that meets the needs of the people, the children, the adults in that neighborhood to help them lift up. When we talk about CDBG being programmed for low to moderate income neighborhoods, the reason for that is its uplift. It's not just about, whatever you want to say it is. It is about helping people live better lives so that they can go on and enjoy. We have skills gaps in our community, huge skills gaps. We've got a STEM program we're putting into the MLK Rec Center that can help close those gaps. We've got Triumph funding. We've got workforce development. We're in a community that needs jobs. And we've got a center that we have put millions of dollars into that can be an excellent training program that can be also social development. And, oh yeah, it's a great gym and sports. But I'm looking for, yes. Yeah. Last night we had a little, I thought he said GYM and he meant GEM. But I mean gym now. In that gymnasium, they won't be touching the top of the ceiling when they do their layups or dunks or whatever it's called in basketball. So I just want to say that this is our MLK Rec Center. And when we roll it out, we need to roll it out with a plan that includes staffing that gets it to where it needs to be to meet the needs of our city and our citizens.
100%. So
Any other, so we eventually will have an item, item number 6, but I don't want to move past any further discussion or questions that the commission might have before we do that.
So does the staff have direction from here, or do we vote on, how do we act, how do we do in this?
You talking about item number 6?
No, in MLK here, and talking about money, do we just know what you need to do and you're gonna come back?
I think we have to set millage this
Okay.
evening, don't we?
Yes, that's item number 6. I'm just talking about general discussion.
Can you go back to was it the first slide? Was it with all the scenarios?
The millage rates?
Oh,
Slide 12, sir.
Oh, sorry.
one of the first ones. There we go.
So no more discussion? Just
Not unless
generally
we want
about
to
the budget of the
discuss
presentation.
taxation and revenues. So, I mean,
We've got an example here of a 0.5 mil increase and a 1 mil increase. What does that translate to average dollars? Do we have that figure?
Yeah, it's the far right, ma'am, you'll see it,
For the
additional revenue.
Property owners, but, for a person, for a
Oh,
taxpayer.
interesting.
Yeah. The 1 mil would be $100 per $1,000 of value for a property owner.
so if it's a $100,000 house, taxable value, how much would that more would that be?
$100.
So the taxable value, you're saying 100,000? Not this, okay.
And all we're doing is we're setting the cap so that when we come back in September and we set the actual millage rate, it cannot be higher than what we set tonight.
That is correct, Commissioner Granger. So if y'all were to set the current millage where it is, 4.7999, you could not come back in September and say raise it by half a mil to 5.2999.
I don't think that would be prudent, personally.
But if you base it on the half mil, would the budget then get redone on the going up a half mil?
We would amend the budget to show what that additional $1.7 million in revenue would do to the budget. And based on the conversation tonight, or this afternoon, we would reevaluate the PCR budget. That would be our primary focus. And then my desire would be, obviously open to feedback from the commission, but my desire would be, that's approximately $1 million. So then with the other 700,000, I would use that towards probably the debt service. But I would want to discuss that with the commission and with Mr. Jones and Ms. Waldron.
Last night, y'all were, I think Josh was talking about, we have subsidies. What we subsidize that you said we might have to look at not doing.
It goes to the conversation I've been having. I mean, we subsidize the current way that we do housing, the current way we do certain programming is subsidized. Marinas are subsidized. They're subsidized from the general fund. I mean, it's looking at any subsidization that the general fund is paying something that goes beyond what the grant allocation is or the enterprise fund is bringing in, which is why you go to those specific departments. I mean, it's a tough spot. I mean, I don't, you're either going to solve it with more revenue or more cuts. I mean, that's really the only way to solve a budgetary problem.
Okay, so let me use the 400,000, that for the engineering. Somebody else can pay for that. Somebody's gonna build, engineer docks. Why do we have to pay for that? There's 400 grand that we know we're gonna pay.
But it's part of an enterprise fund, sir.
Well, the problem is it's coming from debt service. The debt is paying for it, and the debt can only be used on the Panama City Marina. That was the source of procuring the debt.
This is the real thing. It's.
That's what keeps me in business.
And this is where it gets frustrating because a lot of citizens think you can just, because it's $1, you can just use it.
So I will make a suggestion that Jared said to me the other day. We were talking about, so the surtax, if we use $1 million from the surtax allocation, it needs to go, I believe, to the surtax board before we can make that adjustment. Don't they need to approve, or is it already approved?
Their review only to make sure it is in line with what
Okay.
surtax dollars
Yeah.
are allowed to do.
And we meet every quarter.
They only review spending.
Okay, they only review spending. So one of the things we talked about, how do we not, because roads has been a priority that's also been communicated, rather than paying interest payments, through it, is do we get it to those? In that conversation, it led to the solid waste and potentially taking a one-time loan from solid waste reserves to try to make through a gap. But in all of those scenarios, if revenue projections stay the same, you're at the same point in this conversation next year. And so the point is to look at something that's sustainable. Otherwise, you're making a commitment that you may not be able to commit to long-term. And that also has a consequence with it. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? So that could help. Creative problem solving, that's
The immediate
one.
problem that we have is $1 million, and we got all this money coming in. It gives us a year to figure out how to fix the problem going forward, because here we are trying to fix it, and next year we might not have all this money, I'm gonna call it free money, it's not coming in that we didn't expect. So trying to find something out of that to fix today's problem, and then we come up with how to fund going forward. I mean,
Or it's not $1 million problem and you let staff figure out a path forward to where they can crawl, walk, run their way through it. And ultimately, it is $1 million problem, but it is not $1 million problem from day one.
Yeah, you're not going to hire 12 people day one.
Yeah, exactly.
But
So I
it
think there
is-
needs to be a plan.
To Commissioner Street's point, it is something that we have to factor in, because if in a year we're still trying to figure out how to staff a project we made a commitment to years ago, now it's here, doors are ready to be open, and we're saying, but if we do this, then we do that. It is now a recurring expense, and I think we need to figure it out this year rather than kicking it down the road another year.
So I'm not suggesting that we kick it down the road. What I'm suggesting is that just like this past budget year, where Jonathan and team were able to find other sources of revenue, some through the sale of buildings or property, that it can be a problem that can be worked on. And then in the 2027 budget, it is an assumed, whatever the amount is, that it is assumed is that's going to continue. That's all I'm suggesting. And I agree. I think that I agree with you that this isn't a surprise. This building didn't just creep up on us. That there should be a plan in place, just like there was for other things. I do agree with you on that. I just also don't think that we need to have 12 people immediately, September or October 1st.
We agree on that
Yeah,
point.
okay.
I mean, we're at a point where that's not realistic.
Yeah.
I get that, but by January, by March, I mean, people want to see leagues. We got this gym we've been GYing, we've been bragging about, and so.
Janice, I'm with you to try and solve the problem. I think we need to make a decision whether raising revenue is going to be part of the solutions to that problem, or whether it's going to be send it back to staff for further cuts to help solve that problem.
I would like to let staff take another swing at it and come back with a plan to say this is our end state and this is how we plan to get there. I would like to give them the opportunity for that rather than just trying to decide exactly what needs to happen for next year today.
And in preparation for next year. Because next year's going to be another series unless we want to raise taxes. So this isn't, we have the option of kicking the can and kind of massaging things, or we're saying, hey, we have to change as a city.
And and I would love to understand, like I've heard this 12 positions number at MLK, but I have no idea what 12 positions even does. So I mean, I would love to be clued in to what is actually being planned for programming in this facility, because no one's explained that to me at this
Back there,
point.
you hear about it.
So,
The model that we've looked at was the Ocala Recreation Center, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, a report with positions after Mr. Him, Medford, thank you, went on the trip to Ocala to look at that facility and really, said this is kind of similar to what we want to do. Poll the community. We know we want it open and access for the seniors who want a safe place to walk in the morning at 6 a.m. Through the evening on Saturday and Sunday. So, yes, there is a plan. It just happens to cost more than we can afford right now. And so it's been whittled back to pretty much nothing. And that plan wasn't delivered last week.
can we support also, if we're looking at Ocala as this example that's with this, can we also look at how Ocala funds theirs as
Yeah.
well? And I think that would be helpful in understanding.
And it's a mix of funding.
And maybe that helps problem solve the
Yeah, I was going to suggest that we do a mix, that we look at a mix, because all the suggestions up here have been just one-time silver bullet type situations, and so maybe the CRA does contribute some to it. Maybe it doesn't lift the entire load. Maybe we add more to the general fund, and so that means that we don't necessarily have to look for $1 million out of the general fund. Right, so maybe
Other
staff.
communities, I'm sorry, have community foundations. We don't have a community foundation here, but we do have foundations that do support these kinds of projects. And historically, the city has been very good with building bricks and mortar, but less so with people in programs. And it's the programming piece that, that we're stuck on right now. Because to Commissioner Street's point, when we build in 3, 6, 12 employees, it's hard to take them back
I
out.
don't want to do that.
But this is where we are,
But that's, I mean, similar to kind of how some programs can help fund police things, and some there's grants that maybe you can hire 2 officers for a set amount of time. You get grant money that comes in for that kind of stuff. I think the fire department does a little bit of that too, but. The idea is that we don't have to necessarily today find $1 million in the general fund to cover down on what potentially could be a fully staffed operating facility in coming into 2027 budget cycle, right?
I was just pointing out, I didn't go to the departments. I went to something, we're gonna have somebody operating, we got money that, I don't understand how you budget for something and not have the money. That $285,000, that money for the employees at the St. Andrews Marina.
Washington DC.
I know. When I hire somebody, I know I got to pay.
So we
yeah,
ran
that's
this,
us here.
we ran the scenarios, sir, on St. Andrews Marina, and we looked at it for an entire year and thought, okay, we can't afford that. Let's dial it back to 6 months. Then we dialed it back to 3 months. And as you continue to dial it back, the revenue that you would have made continues to drop, and your expenses are kind of set. So you still got to buy fuel, you still got to buy the inventory for the store, you still got to, pay the employees
Right.
and those costs. So 6 months was we felt was an appropriate window to buy some buffer time if for whatever reason they didn't take over the operations yet. But it was still, it was just kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah, and for example, I would love for it to be October 1 that the transfer happens, but I don't want to lose money doing that. That's what I'm trying to say. I think that's what Jared's trying to communicate. You can terminate so early that you may lose money as well. And they may lose money too. And maybe it's just bad for both parties.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
What we just didn't want to end up in a lurch. And if the commission does decide to terminate early, This is a plan. So I mean, we're just planning for this worst case scenario potentially.
If you start messing with the contract with St. Andrews Marina as well, then that doesn't put a lot of confidence into CMP looking at the situation as well. So I'll say that too.
I mean, yeah, I'm just looking for funding, so all that had to change one thing.
Expediting is beneficial to all parties.
Right.
And that's what I would like to see. I mean, we were supposed to be done in June, we're not done. And so, the question is, when will we be done? Because I would love to change this budget to reflect what that timeline actually is. And so that we know what that number should be. The one thing I would just ask, to piggyback on Commissioner Lucas's comments, like just whatever you guys problem solve, if we're going to have 12 employees, one, I just would like a presentation of what those 12 employees are going to do. Also the funding sources that are associated with Ocala and how that project is funded so that we can kind of get an understanding of what we can, what makes sense, what not, if there's a community foundation involved, what do we need to help? I mean, like I'll go start making phone calls for community foundations and start helping in that side. But I don't want to set an unrealistic expectation. And right now, I don't understand what the expectation is other than 12 employees right now. And you gave a little bit of clarity to that too, James, today.
So the bulk of the center's funding in Ocala comes from city allocations covering staffing, facility maintenance, utilities, programming, and events. They're included within the overall general fund budget, which for them is $172.8 million. But they also have user fees, grants, sponsorships. They've got a Let Them Play scholarship and public partnerships. So this is coming from the Ocala Gazette. I guess that's their local daily newspaper.
Is that realistic, Jonathan, to be able to get?
It is, and
Okay.
I wanted to add one thing as well. So first off, Ocala's millage rate is 6.6.
There we go.
I'll just state, and I'm willing to admit we could have done better around this, and I'll take that. But I think, too, I want to be clear, we have thought through this, and it's probably not coming out very clear. So it doesn't take 5 or 6 people to run a league. I mean, most of the leagues that we ran this last couple of years, we had an athletic sports manager who had support from his director, Mr. Mefford, as well as the admin team of Parks and Rec. So, and their job is to coordinate the schedule, and then you hire the referees or the umpires, depending on what the type of sport is. And then so I just, the bigger thing is just the hours that we want to keep the rec center open. I think that's kind of, where we maybe aren't really clearly communicating. I don't know that we want it open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. right out of the gate. I think that's more the thing. We want to have the leagues. We want to have programming during the bulk of the hours, after school hours to that. But do we want it open 7 days a week? I don't know. My feedback is that a lot of these rec centers aren't open that much. I don't know that the Ocala Center one is open, 14 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. So as we move towards that, that's kind of what we have talked about that, I believe, both individually and on the dais, is kind of what are some of those hours? And rather than saying we're going to open, like right out of the gate, we're going to be open, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. I don't know that anybody can answer the specific demands of the community. I think we're going to kind of sense that. I think we know there are some times, like during the summer hours, obviously that's more. After school hours, once school starts back, school will be in full swing when this does open. So, if it is opened up at 6 a.m. in the morning for seniors from around the city to come and walk around, we have some unruly seniors in Bay County, but I think most of them, it could be one person to simply unlock the facility to allow them to come into a climate controlled facility and walk that facility. So there are things that we have kind of thought through. And I know that we've also been reached out to, and we've shared this with each of you, from the Boys and Girls Club, Girls Inc. Some of the other leagues might want to come in, folks that, and we're open. We've done that in the past. We're open to considering proposals from someone that says, hey, I just moved here from wherever, and I just ran a basketball league, and I would love to do it if I can, if y'all charge me a nominal fee to have access to your facility, 2 evenings a week for, 5 hours a night, I'm going to do a league, and y'all tell me what you charge for that. And then, then they kind of run, the city's kind of done both a hybrid version of running some of those leagues themselves, and then also with contractors. And I think there's pluses and minuses to both of them. And so I think, to me, some of the heavier lift and why I wanted to have, the manager on board is when you get into some of the more technical stuff, some of the STEM, some of the cooking, those are those are the ones I think where we need really to have someone that's going to take ownership in that. Because I think some of the other, as far as like just getting access to the facility, open basketball time, open playground time, those are the kind of things I think that's easier to do, even to some degree, the leagues. It's the more broader programming that I think is the question in that end. And so hopefully that's been helpful to some degree. I mean, I just want to encourage, we have thought through some of that. But again, we're mindful of some of the limitations, but I hear the feedback, and we're happy to again sharpen our pencils and look at that again, and might even maybe suggest one of the next 1 or 2 virtual workshops, we dedicate that to the MLK Rec Center.
Do we need a motion?
You will on the if we're ready
on
to.
this.
I haven't formally introduced it.
Not on this topic.
I think it seems like there's a consensus, but
I'm asking them.
yeah, I think Mr. Zimmerman would always say it's probably good to have a vote to formally communicate that this is the will of the commission.
No.
Yeah.
Would you like me
I
to
know.
give you a synopsis of?
No, I'm asking, do we need a motion on item 5? That's what
We
I'm
need a motion out of it. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, specifically around the rec center, I think.
Well, I think where I'm at is I want to understand, like, obviously there's more information than I have access to today. And so I'd like to know what exactly we are programming with whatever you guys present back. So does that make sense what I'm saying? What are you asking for a motion for? I mean,
To lay out a plan to ramp up to the 12 employees that Mr. Mefford has asked for fiscal year 2026 for the MLK Rec Center.
So moved.
A lot.
Except
That's
What you were asking
I mean,
for.
that's what I'm wanting, that's what I'm wanting clarity on.
I
If
think
that's-
what I would like to see is a programming plan for the MLK Rec Center that has a timeline of something that's proposed to that. The 12 employees, you're asking me to say like, yes, we need 12 employees. If I don't know what those 12 employees are doing, like, I'm not just going to go blanketly say, hey, there's 12 employees that are needed. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does. And I would like the MLK Rec manager to work with Mr. Mefford in the city manager's office to shape that.
But that would be part of what you bring back to us.
Correct.
Based on what we're asking for.
Yeah.
can the budget reflect MLK Center on its own, like?
We've talked about creating,
Center.
yeah, we're going to create its own line item. A cost center. I don't know if we have a timeline on that, Ms. Waldron or Ms. Smith. I know we've talked about
What
it.
just freaked me out is you guys, if we motion and we vote, we're authorizing 12 positions that I don't even know what,
We're
like, you see what I'm
authorizing-
Authorizing a.
Yeah.
Authorizing a plan, all aboard. I'm all in. Authorize a plan.
So
I
plan-
just-
I don't want to be authorizing 12
And
positions. I don't know what they're
yeah,
doing.
and it's because when we come back in a month and show this, I can respectfully and lovingly say, this is why we did it. Y'all voted to do it. So if y'all say, hey, why the heck did you do that? I can tell you, y'all asked us to.
Would you say, Mr. Hazel, that much of the work has already been done?
I think a lot of it has been done. Yes, ma'am.
So 30 days is all you need. 30 days?
Perfect. End of August.
All right, so we have a motion.
Why don't, we'll go and commit to the second,
Plan presented in 30 days.
at the second workshop in August is what
I
we'll do.
move that that the city management staff come back to us with the plan for the Martin Luther King Rec Center staffing and programming or based on, I guess we've been talking about 12 employees, so that's based on the requested budget and a plan to get us there in fiscal year 2026. At a workshop, what'd you say?
Whatever the second one, it's the third Monday of August.
I'll second that.
Are we
So
set to?
can I reiterate what you just said?
Yes.
You want a plan for the Martin Luther King Rec Center for staffing and programming based on the requested budget, and it should be ready for the second workshop in August. Is that correct?
The virtual workshop.
And you guys are going to bring us what that requested budget entails, as well as the different
The staffing
funding
and
sources
programming.
that are
Yes,
available
and
to do that.
and timeline.
Okay,
So-
thank
And timeline?
Yeah.
So,
And how much it reflects into the other budget too.
Yeah.
correct. So, All right, I guess I'm moderating the workshop. So is there any other discussion? We do have a motion and a second on the floor. All right,
I'm
seeing
sorry,
none,
who seconded?
Mr. Hughes.
Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Any other general discussion in and around the budget presentation, Mayor, Commissioners? All right, hearing none. Item number 6 is consideration to set the proposed millage rate for fiscal year 2026 for the City of Panama City and the Downtown Improvement Board. As background information, pursuant to Florida Statutes 200.0652B, the Commission shall, within 35 days of certification of value, notify the property appraiser of its proposed millage rate, the maximum to be used on trim notices, rolled back rate, and the date, time, and place of the public hearing to be held to consider the tentative millage rate and the tentative budget. Staff recommendation is outlined with the following proposed millage rates. The general fund at 4.7999, which is what it is this year, and for the Downtown Improvement Board, which is 3.000. However, as earlier discussed, if y'all did want to set a maximum cap of $500,000 increase up to 5.2999, that would generate an additional $1.7 million revenue for the general fund for fiscal year 2026. However, that does not mean at the September budget hearings that you would have to do so. However, if you do not adopt that 5.299 as the maximum millage rate here this evening, you will not have that option in September. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, what's the discussion?
You will have the option, but you will have to physically mail new notices to
yeah.
everybody.
It's much, much, much more difficult yeah,
It's not impossible, but it's
very
more
difficult. It's very difficult, but
It's more
it's not
difficult.
impossible. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Costly.
And
It's also cost money to mail.
True.
Yeah.
True that.
I think in the year past, we went up, I think it was 2 mils max, and I think Jan was very excited over
Got very
that.
excited.
I think,
Don't tease me.
I think her,
You're going to do it.
Jan's going to start doing cartwheels down there.
I think she might have learned to manage her expectations this year. I would say that we probably shouldn't go more than 5 mils maximum.
I think you mean $500,000.
No, I mean, we have to set the rate.
Oh, I got you. Yes, sir. I
The rate
apologize.
would be 5 mils.
I misunderstood you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, not raising by 5 mils, because that would put us well over where the DIB could then operate.
And
that-
sorry, Commissioner.
That's my suggestion.
5 mills would generate an additional 672,000.
Yeah, it's just a nice round number, and it gives us a little bit of wiggle room in case something pops up and we absolutely have to raise the budget or raise the millage rate.
I'm personally at not changing from the current millage 4.799.
Me too. Me too. Like, I don't want to change from that as well, but I just find it not that prudent to not give yourself some wiggle room in case something happens between now and September. That's all I'm saying.
When she got the higher number, that's why I asked about rebudgeting. So if we don't go with 5, budget on 5, and we come back at 4.799, are we gonna come back to this budget?
No, I don't believe they're going to re-budget on 5. They're not going to run the budget again on 5.
I asked him if he was gonna update it.
So we will have to update the budget. If y'all vote not to give yourselves the option to raise the millage, based on the vote that y'all just took prior to that, then we will have to do some additional cuts to find that 800,000-ish for the MLK Rec Center
For
in
the
fiscal
plan.
year 2026. Absolutely.
And I commend y'all for that being the only one problem we have, but keeping it the same. I mean, if we had a list of them, that'd be harder to say no to, but we got one glaring problem at 4.799.
Actually,
And
we don't have
we-
one, I'm sorry.
Well, but that's the only one I can come
Go
up
ahead.
with. Yes, ma'am, I'm fine.
I was just going to say, we don't have one glaring problem. We have one that we talked about today. But our staff, our department's heads have cut. And we don't know, we delved into how much we didn't know about MLK Center. We don't know what the cuts are. They cleaned up very nicely and come and sat here with us this afternoon.
I understand wiggle room. I don't want to entertain any, I know what I'll get for the next 3 months, which will be, well, we could raise the millage if we, and I don't want to have any conversation. I want to just, it is what it is. We live in reality, and next year it's going to get tighter.
Yep.
That's the reality.
So what did you just say?
Stay at 4.79,
I'll second.
Oh, can I?
Well, that's what she asked, what did he just say?
Oh, was it a motion? Yeah. I'm sorry, I thought you made a motion. I thought you just made the motion.
But is this actually a work, like?
Yeah, y'all
This is
y'all
a-
have to vote on setting the
Okay.
millage,
So
correct?
I guess I'll motion we stay at 4.799.
I'll second that.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
No.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
All right, item number 7 is consider,
Sorry, John. We have to do the VIPs now.
oh, I apologize, I thought that was.
0.
Okay, yeah, so we'll need a second. I had lumped those together, but since it wasn't mentioned in the motion, we'll also need to entertain a motion to maintain the same millage rate for the Downtown Improvement Board.
A motion we maintain the same millage rate for the Downtown Improvement Board.
Second.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, item number 7 is consideration of approval of setting the date, time, and meeting place of the tentative budget hearing for the City of Panama City and the Downtown Improvement Board pursuant to the Florida Statute 200.065-2B. The commission shall, within 35 days of certification of value, notify the property appraiser of its proposed millage rate, the maximum to be used on trim notices, rolled back rate, and the date, time, and place of the public hearing to be held to consider the tentative millage rate and the tentative budget. Staff recommendation to the city manager's office is that the commission consider the following dates for the September city commission meetings. Tuesday, September 29th at 8 a.m. Central Time. Tuesday, September 23rd at 5:01 p.m. Central Time. Both meetings will be held
Excuse me.
here.
You said September 29th?
No, September 9th.
You said
Thank you.
You said 29.
Okay, I apologize. Tuesday, September 9th, 2025 at 8 a.m. Central Time. Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025 at 5:01 p.m. Central Time. Both meetings will be held in the county commission chambers. Staff then recommends the following dates for the budget hearing. Tuesday, September 9th, 2025, 5:01 p.m. Central Time. Tuesday, September 23rd, 5:01 p.m., which would be immediately following the county commission, or sorry, city commission meeting, and both meetings would also be held in the county commission chambers. As a reminder, the meetings have to begin after 5 p.m., and we cannot conflict with either the school board or the county commission.
Mr. Hayes, I'd just like to point out, we would do the budget hearing right at 5:01, and then we'd follow
The
with
commission
the
meeting would
city
be-
commission meeting.
For the 23rd, correct?
Yes.
So we have to motion on the budget hearing dates, not necessarily the commission meeting dates.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so
But these are.
I motion that we accept staff recommendation. You don't need 2 dates, or do you need one and a backup?
No.
What do you mean,
just
backup?
one.
We just need to pick one?
No, we have a.
First hearing and second hearing.
First
Yeah.
and second hearing, and these
Okay,
are the
first and
dates
second
we are
hearing.
proposing that do not conflict with the county or the school board.
Then I motion, a motion
Yeah.
to accept your recommendation.
That's what, that would be simple. I'm not sure why, yes. If-
Yeah. Just making sure I
Recommend
do
this,
it.
yes, sir. Thank you.
A motion we accept recommendation.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? All right, Ms. Smith, call the roll.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Street?
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yeah.
Commissioner Granger?
Yes.
Mayor Branch?
Yes.
Motion passes
I was going
5-0.
to get a second on that one.
Let's take it.
Yeah, let's keep going.